Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Candidates 2024. This is the biggest chess tournament of the year, and the winner of this tournament will challenge the World Chess Champion in a match later in 2024. This is round number 5 out of 14. It's 14 rounds because it's a double round robin, 8 players. They all play each other 2 times, and this round was the best so far. Yesterday, there was a day of rest. Every quarter of the tournament, the players get a day to rest. And today they showed up, and dear Lord, they delivered. From start to finish, today's recap is going to be electric. I've been watching the games for 6 hours. The players just got done about 5 minutes ago. Here we go. We kick things off with the battle of Alireza Firouzja versus Hikaru Nakamura. The tournament is running away from these players. Guys like Jan Nepomniachtchi already have 3 points. Having a 1.5 point gap between yourself and the person leading the event is really bad. So that puts a lot of pressure on everybody else. Alireza opens up with e4, e5 from Hikaru, and there is a lot of pressure on Hikaru. First of all, he tried to take a little bit of that pressure off of himself as the tournament began, talking about the fact that he doesn't feel, as let's say, as much of an intensive a drive as the people do about this whole title and candidates and everything. But this game, my man showed up to play. He showed up to play because in this position, a position that has been explored millions of times in an Italian, Hikaru played the move h6. He takes away Alireza's bishop to g5, which is a main weapon of the Italian, and induces white into getting into a fight. Hikaru is basically messing with his opponent a little bit, trying to get him to swing, and he does. And not only does Hikaru play the 4th most popular move in this position, he doesn't retreat the bishop to the natural square, instead the 3rd most popular move. So first we play the 4th most popular move, and then in that position we play the 3rd most popular move, and guess what? We have Alireza out of prep, queen b3. He targets the pawn on f7, Hikaru castles, and now a4. After a little bit of time, we have d6 from Hikaru. Alireza plays knight bd2. 3 minutes spent on that move. Alireza is not really in a level of prep that he is comfortable with, and we have left a lot of known theory. Now, what's interesting is Hikaru, on the very next turn, plays one of the most ridiculous moves that I have ever seen in an opening like the Italian. In this position, following basic developmental principles, Hikaru undevelops the knight. What? This is so provocative, but the idea is that white's bishop is in the center and black can very quickly strike back. So you kind of baited your opponent into playing all of these aggressive pawn moves, and it's actually your opponent who's going to feel a little bit of that pressure in the center. What's interesting is Hikaru was following a very similar game, not exactly, but a game between Fabiano Caruana and Praggnanandhaa 6 years ago at the World Cup. In 2018, maybe 7 years ago in 2017, if you look at the database, that kind of game with knight to b8 was reached. And so Alireza said, you know what? I'm going d4. 10 minutes spent, he plays the move d4, and he says, I'm not going to let you get your d5, and the board explodes. We have ed, cd, Hikaru lashes out with a5, forces Alireza to do something. Alireza marches down the center of the board. Knight jumps out to h5 and back into the action, attacking Alireza's pawn on the g2 square. g3, now Hikaru ducks underneath, lands across, almost knocked my own glasses off, counter punches in the center of the board, sacrificing a pawn in order to get the bishop. Alireza is not interested and instead brings the bishop back to the f1 square. Look at both guys. It is the 15th move of the game. And on the 15th move of the game, both guys have spent 50 minutes. This is a sign of a high-level classical chess battle. Bishop to g2. Hikaru creates the structure with c6. Now we get into a little bit of a maneuvering phase. Both guys making necessary preparations for the next explosion. Bishop c3. We don't have to wait long. c5. Hikaru going for it. Alireza plays rook f to b1. Hikaru holds together the queen side with rook a6. Takes bishop c5. And right around here, as both guys were kind of locked in this, I mean, it's a wrestling match of chess pieces. Hikaru's queen and rook are stacked on the a-file. Alireza is targeting that. The rook is trapped. It can't go anywhere. Knight c4 cuts the communication of the white position, though. The knight jumps out to b3, hitting the bishop on c5. Yes, we could spend 10 minutes analyzing all of the hypothetical possibilities, and I am sure people will make a 1 hour to 90-minute video of just this game. And that is absolutely worthwhile. It is totally worth exploring, but the players can't even do that themselves. Remember, on the 40th move, they either run out of time or get the 30 minutes of the next time control, and they don't have a lot of time to do that. Queen A8, Bishop G2, the tension is building. Hikaru makes an inaccurate decision here, but Alireza doesn't capitalize. It would have been better for Alireza to route the knight back to the middle of the board for some reason. Maybe then he can go to the F4 square, but knight to E1 was correct. Instead, he goes this way, and very quickly, Hikaru gets back into the game. Now, right around here, I thought we were heading probably for some sort of peaceful resolution. They both have 4 moves to make or they lose on time. 1 each, 2 each. Oh my goodness. I mean, rook E1 and Alireza looks like he's absolutely dominating Hikaru here. Rooks, queen, bishop. Hikaru, the best defensive player in the world, I would argue. One of the most elusive, makes the 40th time control. Alireza can't break through. So Alireza tries to break through. He thinks for a little while and tries to break Hikaru's defenses, and Hikaru creates a blockade on the dark squares. Look at this. And at this point, I was like, wait a minute, Hikaru's playing for a win. Hikaru's got the endgame advantage. He's got the dark square blockade against the pawn and against the bishop. But Alireza was so clever here, and he built up a really nice defensive setup. Hikaru tried his best, but that's it. Unstoppable force meets a movable object, and right here, there was a moment for the players to go home. Rook takes d4, knight takes, rook f5, all the pawns fall off the board. Alireza didn't like something, and instead of that, continues to try to attack. And now we get into a little tactical skirmish. We have king takes, rook check, Hikaru blocks, take, and the bishop can't discover an attack on the king because it's going to get taken. But Alireza plays e7. And Hikaru saw all of this ahead of time and lands himself in this endgame. And now only black can win. How's that possible? Well, black has more pawns. A rook for a knight is bad, but Alireza doesn't have the amount of time to go and take this pawn, and then take this pawn, right? And then try to, he's just gonna lose because black is too quick. Rook A8, D2. Black is too fast. Rook D8, knight D3. White resigns. So knight F4, only Hikaru can win. They both have less than 4 minutes. King to F1 played by Alireza. Hikaru pushes the pawn. Alireza comes forward. Hikaru grabs the pawn with check. Now, King E3. If black gets greedy and tries to defend all the pawns, now white does have time, and now it is a very complicated endgame. It's basically a roll of the dice. Someone's going to win, someone's going to lose, maybe it's going to be a draw. So in this position, on the 61st move of the game, Hikaru played the move pawn to G4, like this, and said, Alireza, you cannot take my pawn because I will sneak through. Alireza either has to go here, he has to go to G8, he can even go to D8, but he cannot take the pawn. And with 96 seconds remaining on the clock, he took, and he played that move with 1 second remaining. After the 40th or the 60th move of the game, the players get bonus time. Time is added to their clock, so they don't lose on time. That's the time control. And I believe in this position, maybe it's 10 seconds, Alireza took the pawn. And in this position, he resigned. He resigned because if rook G8, that doesn't stop the pawn at all, because rook takes, knight check. Alireza played a back and forth battle and made one mistake and lost it all immediately. And Alireza Firouzja goes down to Hikaru, a massive, I cannot understate how massive of a win this is for Hikaru. 1.5 out of 4, 1.5 points out of first place. A win with black. It literally does not get any better than that. The narrative spinning on social media after some of the interviews and answers and things like that. Oh my goodness. This man, you would think, he is one of the most polarizing figures in the game. And this man showed up and won with black. And on the flip side of this result is Alireza Firouzja, who now for a second candidates in a row is tied for last. He has 1.5 out of 5. 3 draws and 2 losses. That is insane. And that was just the beginning of today's recap. Isn't that incredible? We got a whole lineup of games of banger after banger after banger. So, yeah, I'll let you all take a breather. Go, grab a snack. Just keep the, maybe we'll throw an ad in here or something. Put it up on the smart TV. I know what you guys watch. You watch on the smartphone, smart TV, whatever, desktop. Oh, my goodness. What a round this was. Pull up this game. Pre-tournament favorite, I said, this was my prediction. I said Hikaru, Nepo, Fabiano. Those are the big 3. And I said, of all the Indian superstars, I think all eyes are on Pragg. And he showed up in this game looking for a fight. He opened with e4. Jan Nepomniachtchi, I will remind you of a statistic, has played 2 candidates and he's in the middle of the third. He has played 32 games of chess at the candidates tournament. He has been leading the tournament or tied for first throughout his life. All those games. He is unbreakable with black and he is performing at over 2,900 with white. And with black, he plays the Petrov defense. He is probably the world's leading expert at the moment, maybe not named Fabiano Caruana, on this opening. Knight e5, d6, knight f3, knight e4, d4. Nobody even plays this anymore against Jan because he knows it like the back of his hand. But Team Praggnanandhaa and Praggnanandhaa himself showed up today, played c4, played knight c3. This is world championship level preparation. Jan Nepomniachtchi had 2 training camps to play for the title of chess. The title of chess, bishop f5. This is a new and modern approach to the Petrov defense. You don't need to know the specifics, but after bishop to g5, queen to a5, there is a move, knight to h4. This move was played once in 2018 between Anish Giri and Fabiano Caruana. Both of those names might mean something to you. Since then, this concept has been played over 100 times. This is the way modern level chess develops. They go down a path, they explore it. Knight to h4. Now, bishop e6 takes. The queen takes the bishop. The knight comes to f3 while it's hanging, queen a5. And in this position, bishop h3 is played. Now, the bishop is hanging and the pawn is hanging. Couple of fun facts about this position. Historically, white comes back this way. This pawn is untouchable because it's too dangerous. This move has been played less than 10 times in human history. But earlier in 2023, it was played against Nepo. And in that game, Nepo went here. Pragg knew all of this. He was ready to face him here, and Nepo knew the new best move is this. This move has never been played. Jan Nepomniachtchi takes the pawn on c3, and it's basically poker at this point. Who is going to out-prep who? And Pragg wins the battle, because after rook b1, b6, and rook b3, queen a5, neither guy has spent much time here. Both guys memorized the first 18 moves of the game. Compare that to this game, Alireza versus Hikaru, where after 15 moves, both guys had spent a combined 100 minutes. Here, both guys have spent no time. In this position, Pragg plays the move d5. And all hell breaks loose. d5 is a brilliant sacrifice. It cuts the queen's access that way. You cannot take with the queen because you would walk into a complete bulldozer. So d5, Jan spends 40 minutes capturing a pawn. This is nuts. At this point, the engine is rumbling back home. Pragg doesn't even think, knight to g5. Team Pragg finds this idea. They find an idea to pose massive problems for black. If black defends the position perfectly, he's going to make a draw. That's the way chess works. If he doesn't defend the position properly, his soul will be taken from his body. Jan does not find the best way. He finds a way that leads to a ridiculous attack. Now, it very well could be the only way. The engine finds all sorts of different things. It likes g6, stopping white from playing queen h5, but the position is a nightmare. No pun intended. You can literally sack your knight and take and try to win the rook back. I mean, it is craziness. Jan goes here, and Praggnanandhaa sacrifices his knight. This move doesn't quite deserve a brilliant because it's all home-cooked preparation. King takes f7, and now not rook f3 check, not queen h5, not even queen f3, not even queen e2 threatening mate. Pragg gives away a knight for free and plays rook d3. 50-minute time advantage. Nepo is in disarray. He plays knight d7 after another 13 minutes of thought, which is the only move. You need to counter-sacrifice your knight so you can run away to safety. And it doesn't even get captured. Pragg is still in his prep. And in this position, the only way not to lose everything is to sacrifice this bishop with check and then put the knight on c5. And it's important you do that so this king is kind of out in the open. You need to bait white's king out into the open, then try to defend yourself, then run your king to safety. And in a tragic turn of events, Jan Nepomniachtchi blunders. And the bishop gets taken, and Prague is winning. 24 moves of prep. Prague is winning. The idea is queen to d5 check. King g8, queen d5 check. Now, why did Prague spend 16 minutes on this check? It's the only move. I mean, what else can you put? Well, g3 is an option to bring the bishop back and around, but he does ultimately come up with this. And on high depth, he is winning. If he plays queen e5, queen e5 sets up rook takes pawn, check. If black in this position tries to defend the pawn, bishop f5 forces you back and you lose. So, king h8, queen e5, you can also run over here. So that's not possible. Then I go rook g6, rook f7, I sacrifice the rook, I give you this check, and then I take here, king g7, queen d5, and I'm up a pawn, and I'm probably playing for a win. But it's even crazier than that, because the top engine line after king h8 and queen e5, queen a2, is bishop f5, king g8 sidestepping that, bishop b1, and then queen b2. So if black takes the pawn and goes back, you win the battle for this diagonal and you win the game. I mean, this is, if Prague had detonated 29 moves of prep, I would have given up hope. So Prague now, after queen d5, is about to take down the man that has literally never not led a candidate's tournament. And he blunders. The move order is important. You have to start with queen e5 threatening this, because after this, Jan, knight b7. The queens are staring at each other. There is an X-ray attack on the bishop on f5, and the rook is hanging as well. You can take this, I'll take with a knight. You can take this, I'll take this. And in an unbelievable turn of events, Jan escapes. And he is still under pressure, but that's it. Prague just tries his best, but psychologically, you simply cannot recover from this. He did his best. We get into a rook endgame. On the 44th move of the game ends in a draw. I mean, oh, you talk about a missed opportunity. He detonated. I can't even express what he just did. He showed up with just a brilliant piece of preparation. 2 pawns and a knight. If this is showing us anything about this tournament, Prague has God-level preparation. I mean, good luck to the rest of the players. And then he just didn't put it away. And I will never understand why he didn't play queen e5. I'm not saying I would have played queen e5, but I wonder what he saw. Because he saw queen e5, and he didn't play it in favor of bishop here. And I will never know what he didn't see, and Prague draws the game. And Jan maintains 3.5 and top position. Now, quickly we're going to pop over, because actually today, the women were relatively peaceful. And Humpy versus Goryachkina was a regular Queen's Gambit game. The players got very tactical early, but the queens were sort of traded. And White had a little bit of a nice position, but ultimately it came down to Black getting some strong counterplay. And it turned into a rook endgame that ended in a draw. Now, Tan Zhongyi from China, Nurgül Salimova. This was a Caro-Kann. This was one of the best positions that somebody had today. White had a very instructive bind, but grabbed a pawn, and that was enough for Black to get very active and take the fight to White on the light squares. After a quick skirmish, queen back to f2. Nurgül fought back very, very nicely, and despite being a pawn down for most of the game, defended very well. Bishop c4, got active, got her pawn back, another rook endgame, and another draw. I think you can kind of understand where we're heading today. Vaishali versus Anna Muzychuk. Anna Muzychuk has had some good positions, and I'm just going to fast forward through this one because Vaishali came to fight. It was a very complicated back and forth game, and in this position, everything is closing up. Anna Muzychuk can win this game if she takes back the right way, and apparently the right way is with this pawn to open up the b file and create c6 possibilities. She takes back the wrong way, and this is just a fortress. There is absolutely no way in here for anybody, and the players agree to a draw. The biggest miss of the day was in the Leiting Jie game, where Katarina Lagno got very aggressive and actually had a fantastic position. She was winning with tactics flying all over the board, ripping open the white king, as you can see, queen d6, and she had a huge attack. I mean, I really cannot understate how aggressive this position was, but Leiting Jie fought back, and I think we, like right around here was maybe the biggest moment of the game. Black could have played bishop f3 and created some mating chances, but white would have went here and kept fighting, but this was maybe the biggest miss of the day. And then here there's a funny board glitch where like the rook doesn't take, but it took back, and takes was played, and they made a draw. Actually, the women were very peaceful today. 4 draws, couple of fighting games, but I mean, out of respect to all the candidates, I'm putting them in today's recap, but they were pretty peaceful. And the men, they were throwing tantrums all over the place. I mean, it was spectacular. Vidit Gujarati, I'm just going to say Vidit Gujarati. I know his middle name is Santosh, but I want his flag there. This one was nuts. So Fabiano sensed weakness, okay? Fabiano, half a point out of first place, half a point behind Nepo, plays the Sicilian. Why is he trying to hunt Vidit? Has nothing to do with respecting or disrespecting. It has to do with the fact that Vidit just lost 2 games in a row. And you hunt a man who's lost 2 games in the candidates. Because the guy who lost 2 games in the candidates might want to draw. But he also might want to catch the guy in first place. So he's stuck in a weird place. And we saw already Fabiano play like this. He played like this against Alireza. Do you remember that? No, of course not. Remembering openings is difficult. But he allowed a Rossalimo, and then he played knight to f6. I do think that was against Alireza. It was a very complicated game. We have takes, and Fabi plays the most provocative way possible. Bishop h5, bishop to f4, and I do just want to say, by the way, Vidit likes his d4 stuff. So e4 from Vidit, I mean, this is very impressive stuff. He's fighting Fabi in a Sicilian, bishop f4. Fabi played so aggressively here. Vidit spends like 20 minutes on the move bishop f4. Fabi strikes at him with his c-pawn, no development at all, and plays e6. He's like waving a bull on, and he tanks here, Vidit, and he finds the best move. The best move in this position is to punish black for playing like this. Take as much space as possible. Queen b3. Incredible move, giving up this pawn completely because queen b7 ravages the black position. Queen b6 played. Bishop e3 saying, Fabi, take me. Fabi comes back to c7, and Vidit plays this. Vidit is down a lot on time. He's down 48 minutes, but he has a dominant position. And Fabiano here plays knight d7. He spends 8 minutes, plays knight d7. And he's trying to fight Vidit, but he doesn't have his feet under him. So Vidit plays knight h4. Vidit a little hesitant. And finally, the attack is upon us. The engine here was giving a massive advantage to the white position. Like a deep engine was giving a massive advantage. It was saying that white is much, much, much better. And Vidit found takes and d4, very principled. A guy is trying to fight with you on the edge of the board while his king is in the center. He can't really castle. So what do? You just take the center. He has more space. He's not castled. How is he possibly going to attack you? It violates all of the principles of chess. But Fabi's going for it. Sacrificing a pawn. That's a free pawn, but it opens the A-file, which could ultimately come back to haunt Vidit. B5. Knight C5. Vidit just very principled. Let's just play a position where I'm a pawn up. All Fabi has is the A-file. That's it. If I consolidate this position correctly, I'm going to beat Fabiano Caruana, and I'm going to get back to 50%. H4. Courageous. You can't take this. It's not capturable because then I infiltrate on the H-file. So Fabi now plays rook A4. Plants, targets the center. Vidit plays the best move, bishop D4. Targeting the pawn on G7 and defending against the rook on the A-file. E5 from Fabi is a losing move. Fabiano Caruana is now losing because of the sniper shot, queen G3. And Vidit pins the pawn to the queen. Fabiano now has to play queen a7. He spends 12 minutes because he realizes the game is over. His bluff did not work out. It has been called, and Vidit has more than enough time. All he has to do now is stay calm. He takes on e5 with the queen. The bishop is pinned. The pawn is about to get hit. Rook takes a2. Yes, this is a check. It is very scary. You can already run away if you want, but there's no need. You can just take the pawn on g7. This check does absolutely nothing. This check does even less because of b3 and bishop back. You're winning. Queen e4 doesn't matter because you have king c1 and you hide and you win. Queen g7, rook f8. Vidit is up 2 pawns against Fabiano Caruana. And 12 minutes. He has 12 minutes to make 14 moves, but he's got to stay focused. Now, rook a1 doesn't work. But the only winning move in this position is to run. The king has to be brave. Vidit has to be brave. He has to run. He doesn't run. And guys like Fabiano, guys like Nepo, you give them one chance to make a comeback, the door is sealed shut. He seals the door shut. You are now no longer going to be able to escape. You might say, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is I now play f6. This check is no longer that scary because I run away. And let's say you go queen g3, rook a1, king d2, you lose the bishop, you lose the game. So Vidit had to run. Oops, Vidit had to run. He had to play king c1. Check doesn't work because you escape. And when the queen comes in, you're already too fast. Queen b4, king e3. Queen b3, even king f4 is winning, by the way. Vidit had to be brave. Fabiano shuts the door. The game is now forced to end in a draw because if Vidit doesn't repeat the position, he will literally lose the game to rook a1 mate. Heartbreak. Just like the Prague game. Just like I mean, you literally cannot script these things. Vidit played so well, but it's literally never over. It's never over against the guys that are in their 30s that have played multiple candidates. Nepo got one chance on move 27. Fabiano has one chance. And he takes it, queen a4. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And it's crazy because queen e5 lost the advantage for Vidit and it would have won the game for Prague. It's the same move. And that takes me to the final game of the day. Gukesh D, aka Gukesh Demaraju, versus Nijat Abasev. Nijat just made 3 draws with white and lost the game with black. Gukesh is close to being in the lead for first place. He plays e4. We have another Petrov, just like we saw in the Nepo game. This one, Gukesh sends us to kind of an offbeat line with d4, bishop d3, and all of this has been played. We are following the main line, okay? So we are following something that has been played many times. And usually the way white sets up here in the hundreds of games is bishop 2 e3, c3, knight d2. Gukesh plays rook e1. And then he plays here. So Gukesh does not put the bishop on e3 yet. He plays in a way nobody's ever played before. We are officially out in no man's land. He gets a game. That's the most important thing. He's rated 2743. He's half a point out of first place. He has to play a game. He has to win a game against Nijat Abasev. That is the only way he wins this game. He ties Nepo for first. He doesn't know that because the game is going on. Knight d7. Look, Abasev, 10 minutes spent. 10 minutes. And the reason is because if you bring the bishop out, the bishop becomes a target. And if you bring the bishop out, the bishop becomes a target. Knight f1, knight e3, for example, knight d4. So knight d7. And Abasev tries to get rid of the pawn pretty quickly. We have a capture. We have an imbalance. 4 on the queen side for black. 3 on the queen side for white. 3 on 2 on the king side, which means all of the endgames are going to be super imbalanced. Knight bd2. But it doesn't get started very good for Gukesh. He is down a lot on time early. His structure is looking solid, but I have no idea how on earth he's going to create winning chances here. Really. Black is just doing a great job. Look at this. We just have queens, rooks, and knight. That's it. But suddenly Abasev is playing defense. And suddenly Gukesh owns the only open file. And suddenly Gukesh is making progress. And suddenly Gukesh is nearly winning. He's cutting the communication of the black position. The d4 pawn is weak. The a4 pawn is weak. He plays rook e4. rook e5, and both guys repeat once. They're not going to repeat the position. Look at this position from Gukesh. But on second glance, Gukesh has 4 minutes. He has 4 minutes. He's up a pawn, but Abasov is 2 squares for making another queen. The only reason Abasov can't just go d2 is because the queen comes back, and then I just stop the pawn. Like, the pawn can't just run away. So queen a4, Abasov plays queen a2. Gukesh plays this, which is okay, g6, queen b4, he's winning. He has 5 moves. Gukesh has 100 seconds to make 5 moves, or he loses on time in the candidates. Rook e1, he just spent 30 seconds on that move. Rook e8, he has 4 moves to make. Rook e4, keeping the tension. Rook takes, rook takes. Rook d5. Gukesh has 50 seconds to make 2 moves, or he loses on time. He goes here. Not the best. He could have blockaded, maybe played for b4. He goes here, knight g7, and on the 40th move, he plays the nervous king to g1, gets his extra time, but now he loses the pawn on c5, and his advantage is gone. His advantage is gone, and it's going to begin all the way from the beginning. Unbelievable. Another game of one of the Indians. I mean, Prague and it was a round of just of heartbreak for India. It's just unreal. And then here, Abasov lost his mind. Somewhere in all of this head-spinning complications and all of this, it's very easy to say, well, why didn't he? Abasov gave up the pawn. He spent 6 minutes. Clearly, he didn't like something, because I guess he was worried about b4, so he just gave up the pawn on his own. He just completely gave the pawn up. He didn't need to do that. I guess he thought he was going to lose the pawn, but now Gukesh gets the pawn, and a couple of moves later, look at knight f4 coming in from Abasov, threatening knight to e2, right? Threatening all of this. Rook e3, and maybe Abasov thought he had rook d3 here, which kind of cuts the communication. Can't take because of this. But after queen c2, you're completely fine. So he goes here instead, and this is just a pure bluff. This is a pure bluff. If Gukesh in this position takes on c6, he wins the game. He wins the game because this looks terrifying, but you go king f1, and that's it. It's over. So how's it over? I don't know. Would rook h2, well, that's not a threat. Rook e8 check, king h7, and I have, for example, rook b8 and rook b7. I just win. But black has knight d5, rook b7, but this is not mate because you're pinned. Oh, brutal. So Gukesh has to see all of this. He has to see after queen c6, but Gukesh doesn't have a lot of time. He has 5 minutes again. So he goes here, and again, Gukesh, against all odds, the position is back to equal. It goes into a queen endgame, and Abasov can defend this forever. 3 on 4, it is so close, and Gukesh has to start over. He's doing his very best. The pawn is a few squares away from queening. It's on the outermost part of the board. So at this point, we rely on something in chess called the table base. Table base means chess is solved with a certain amount of pieces on the board or less. It's a little bit too early right now, but in a couple of moves, this happens. There are now 7 pieces remaining on the chessboard. An engine with a database, terabytes of data, tells you that this is a draw if black defends correctly. And Gukesh has a second lease on life. He would love to trade the queens and promote the pawn. And he's doing his best. But Abasov defends very well, checking him into oblivion. We are now past 70 moves. The game is a draw. It's still a draw. Queen d8, queen d6. And at this point, both guys get a new queen. They trade, and they both get a new queen. And this is a draw. If black defends correctly, there is simply no way for white to push the pawn or to trade the queens into a winning king and pawn endgame. I'll give you an example, all right? Something like, I know that blunders a pawn, but something like this is a winning king and pawn endgame. So you want to avoid that. Queen a7, king h6, queen e3, and in this position, Gukesh is winning if he finds queen c5 check. The idea of queen c5 is to then sneak back to f8, sneak back to f5, and you force a trade of queens. For example, here, you have check, here, king f7. There's no checks, and you escort your pawn the rest of the way. It's not stalemate because the queen can move, but he misses it, but it's still really complicated, and now the only move here for Abasov is queen g2. stopping all the checks, queen to g2, in fact setting a trap. Here's a nice way to lose the game. But instead of that, on the 83rd move of the game, Abasov plays queen f1, and Gukesh uses the queen as a shield. And not only is it a shield, anywhere the king moves, it's a discovered check. And then he gives a check. And then he's gonna trade the queen, and he wins. King f6 check, queen g5 check, Abasov resigns. Gukesh, it took 87 moves. It took 6 hours, but Gukesh is tied for first after 5 rounds of the candidates. These are your standings. Everything remained the same on the women's side because they all made draws. Nepo and Gukesh tied for first, Fabiano in second, and Hikaru and Prague with 50% on 2.5. Massive win for Hikaru. The tournament could have been spinning out of control for him, but he gets a win with black. Fabiano right there. It's a 1-point race in the men's. We have 9 more rounds to go. See you all tomorrow for round number 6. Get out of here.